Welcome back to Man vs. Meeple, the show where we talk about all things board game related. Today we have a Kickstarter preview. This Kickstarter is running right now. It's for City of Gears from Gray Fox Games. This is an area control worker placement where you're moving your workers around the board, and there's a lot of gears on the board as well.
Yeah, and this is very much a prototype that you're looking at. It's obviously been changed quite a bit. If you guys take a look at the Kickstarter page, it looks mostly, but not really like this, because
a lot of die cuts, right?
A lot of the player boards and tiles, the city tiles themselves have die cuts where the gear is actually going to fit down into them, and it looks beautiful. And Gray Fox does a great job with all their stuff. All right, so it is an area control style game for 2 to 4 players. The idea in the game is that an inventor who created this steampunk type of city has passed away, and the city's kind of gone into disrepair. And you have all these different inventors who are trying to revive the city. So in order to revive the city, they're sending their automatons or their robots out here to be able to fix it.
Right, and you're going to start the game with a bunch of different tiles. In fact, we can talk about the components right now. The main board is 9 different tiles, and there's going to be more than that, of course. You're going to select 9 from them, place them face down randomly. There's a bit of an exploration thing here going. So you're going to be moving out there, flipping over tiles. Each of those tiles is kind of like a worker placement location where you're going to enact power.
When you look at the board here, you're going to notice that you have some discovery tokens on them. These are victory points when you first discover that and flip the tile over. Of course, we said there's going to be die cuts. Each of these little gear locations will actually be physically cut out of the board, meaning that you can slip gears in there and place control markers on them in order to show that you have control within that particular city. But not only that one, but the ones that are adjacent to it as well.
Yeah, not only is that control ultimately, but those are the doorways through which you're going to move your robots or automatons around the board. So you can't move from one tile to the next unless you've placed a gear on the board so that you can travel.
Each of these different city tiles have different types of icons, meaning that they may interact with other type of city tiles throughout the game. They also are worth a number of victory points, depending if you control them at the end of the game, and they all have abilities on them. To use those abilities, basically you're activating one of your robots and spending some of the resource tokens within the game. So we talked about the main game board itself. You also have a player board. Now on this player board is a number of different things. At the very top, you're going to notice that we have all these player boards connected to the city. That's because there's 2 sections in which your robots can move from your factory into the city. But in order to do that, you have to build a gateway that David just said.
Yeah, exactly. That's going to be one of the first gear links that you build, is putting that gear link between your player board and the main board. You have to do that before you can move even your first robot. And then from that point on, you're going to be able to use those gears as you pull them as either gear links on the board or developments, which are across the bottom of the player board. The bottom of the player board has some locations here. It's not limited to that number, but you're going to be able to pull a gear from the bag, and if you don't use it as a gear link, you can use it as a development. Each of the gears has some sort of power or endgame scoring or ongoing one-time ability, that sort of thing, that you can place down here at the bottom of your board. When you pull a gear, you can only pull one of those and use it that way. You can only use one of them as a gear link. But these things are going to basically enhance your own player powers throughout the game.
You're also going to notice on your player board you have 3, or you will have 3 standing up automatons. These are the guys that are available for you at the very start of the game. And you have 3 that are laying down. These can be purchased at any time on your turn for 2, 4, or 6 victory points or prestige points. You're actually giving away your victory points in order to gain access to more of them. And the reason why you want to have those is because if you get them onto the board, that's more area control for you to control those city tiles at the end of the game. You also have a number of different locations on the bottom here. These are where you can house tokens that you save from one round to the next. You'll notice one for Steam, one for your gears, and then one for charges, and then one that's kind of a wild.
Right.
So you can save up to 4 total tokens from one round to the next. You also have 3 dice. These dice have all the different kinds of 3 resources that you can get in the game. You're going to be rolling these dice every round to produce those resources that you can use. And the last space here on the bottom is movement tokens. There's a variety of different city tiles that will give you movement tokens. Movements can be done either through Steam or through movement tokens or through charges. We'll get into that once we get into the gameplay. You're going to have all the gears in a bag. They're just going to be randomly mixed in there. And then you have 4 opening day tiles. These opening day tiles will not be added to the bag itself until all 9 of the tiles have been flipped up. Once that happens, all 4 of these will go into the bag. When 3 of them are drawn, that's a hard stop and the game will end.
Right, that kind of brings some excitement to that last stretch of the game because you put those things in the bag and you never know when they're going to be drawn along with any other gears that someone draws.
So let's talk about how the game actually plays. It's very, very simple. There's 4 phases in a particular turn. The very first thing that happens is that the start player is going to roll their dice. When they roll their dice, these are the resources that are available to them. And as we said, these resources are either steam, gears, or charges. Some of them will have a slash, meaning you have the availability of taking one or the other. Once that happens, you go into the second phase.
Yeah, the second phase is triggering a city tile. Now we're getting a little ahead of ourselves because we haven't moved out onto the board and talked about how you do that. But once you do and you start flipping over these tiles, if you have one of your robots on a city tile, you can, during this phase, choose to activate that city tile. Many of those require the robot to be obviously on the tile and then some amount of resources to be spent. The cool thing here is you're not only going to activate the power that's on that tile, but any of the gear links that you have connected to other city tiles from that one, as far as you have gear links, you're going to get sort of one of these little bonuses from the top of each of those tiles as well. Oftentimes these are just extra resources in addition to the die that you had just rolled that you're going to be able to spend in the following part of the game.
Let's talk about that a little more in depth. I have a Automaton right here. This requires me to have a robot in this section and to spend 2 gears. I could spend 2 gears from my dice or a gear and 1 from my player board. I would lay him down showing that I've used that city tile this turn. Once you use a city tile in a turn, you can't activate that one again. When you do it, you simply get whatever that resource is. This one gives me 2 charges. I collect those 2 charges and put them on my player board. And then, as David said, you're going to link up all the different tiles that you have connecting gateways to. You don't have to have presence in those gateways. You just simply have to have a doorway into them. So I look at this one, and I have a gateway, meaning that I gain 1 steam. You don't gain the bottom part, you gain whatever is on the top.
Yeah, the cool thing here is later in the game, if you've put a lot of investment in moving around the board and getting a lot of gear links out there, you're able to trigger any given tile and potentially get maybe 3, 4, 5 extra resources to spend in the next part of the phase.
The next phase is part 3. This is called Perform Actions. There are 4 different actions that you can take, and you can take them in any order and as many times as you so wish. The very first one that you can do is to simply move your worker. Now, to move your worker, you have to have a doorway from one section to the next, and you have to have the ability to move them. Movement can be done with 3 different types of resources. 1 is steam, 1 is charges, and 1 is movement tiles. As we said, the movement tiles can be gathered from a variety of different city tiles on the board. Your steam allows you to move 1 space and 1 space only. So I could spend 3 steam to move 3 spaces. However, again, you have to have connecting gateways. And when you do that, you simply move your worker from 1 space to another. Now, that worker could be the one that was standing up or laying down.
Right.
It doesn't matter at that point because you've already had the round where you've activated the tiles. The last thing you can do is you can spend a charge. If you spend a charge, you can move as far as you want, with the exception that you can only move once again through gateway. So I could take one of my standing up workers, come onto the board through this gateway, and stop right there because that's my last gate.
And after moving, or like Jeremy said, whenever you'd like to on your turn, you can use gears that are on your dice or on your player board to do the following. You're going to have a bag of these gear tokens. For every gear that you want to draw, you're going to spend either a gear token off of your board or from a die and simply draw the gear. And like I said earlier, this gear is going to have 2 sides. One's going to have an ability. So you can look at that ability and determine, do I want to add that to my tableau of abilities? And these things can have a number of different effects. In fact, Jeremy mentioned already, you have to have gear links on the board to move through from tile to tile. There are some of these that allow you to move through other people's gear links once per turn. So it gives you a lot more flexibility.
Right.
So if you don't add it to your tableau of developments, the other way you can use it is you can flip it over and place it on the board in one of these spaces connecting to another tile from where you already are.
Now, you do have to have an automaton in the section in which you place that gear. So he couldn't simply place this gear link way over here if he doesn't have one of his robots in that city section. Now, one of the cool things about the developments or the city links is you can draw as many as you want. If you have 5 gears, you can spend all 5 to draw 5. However, that just gives you flexibility in the ones that you choose. You can still only place 1 gear link, and you can still only place 1 development per turn.
Right, and it should be noted too, we've already mentioned this, but these development tiles give you a lot of different flexibility, some of which even allow you to place more than 1 gear link, or maybe more than 1 development. So as you pull those out of the bag, it's a really exciting aspect of looking at the ability and going, well, I was going to use this as a gear link, but I cannot pass up this ability, so I'm going to use it that way.
The third thing you can do is do overcharges. Now, you will gain charges from a variety of different things within the game. This is to take that portion of the game.
Indeed
so
it
you can
is.
do two things with this. Again, you have to be in a physical location, either with another player or in a location that's connecting to one of their gear. So if I was in this location with David, I could spend one of these charges to do one thing, and that's to send his worker back to his factory. That's one of the main things. If you have two of these, this is even worse. You get rid of two of these and you get to destroy a gear link in an adjacent space next to your worker. So I can pick any one of these gear links and physically destroy them. His control marker will go back to him. However, the gear link is removed from the game.
Yeah, and that's going to do two things. One, it's going to decrease my ability to move around the board, of course.
Yeah.
And in fact, in this case, Jeremy removed the one connected to my player board. So I'm going to have to rebuild that before I can get guys back out on the board.
Yep.
The other thing, of course, is later in the game, you're going to look at these gear links as part of the area majority to determine who gets those points. So you can go out there and take a lot of those off the board if you can, and really change up those points as well.
The final thing you can do is you can construct another worker. You can do this as many times as you want. Again, you have to give up victory points. For your first worker, it's 2, and then 4, and then 6, and you're simply taking that worker and standing him up. He's an available worker for you to move out into the city at a later turn. Now, the final thing that happens is to spoil your overages. Any of the resources that you have not used on your dice can be turned into tokens in order to use them on future rounds. So if I have a gear that I decided, you know what, I didn't want to use it this round, you can stock it on your player board. And you can do that for every type of resource with a wild. However, if you have more than that, they get discarded. Unless it's a charge, charges can actually be given back to the bank for 1 victory point each. And you're simply going to take the victory point marker and put it face down on your side.
Right, and after you do that, you're going to do this round after round until all of the 9 tiles have been revealed. And like we said earlier, at that point, you're going to add the opening day tokens into the gear bag.
Yep.
Keep playing until 3 of those are pulled.
Yep.
Here's the interesting thing. As soon as that third one is pulled, hard stop.
Yeah.
And I mean hard stop.
Yeah.
That person doesn't even get to finish their turn.
That's right.
So the game ends immediately, and then you're simply going to take a look at area control, add up points, and see who wins.
So area control works like this. You're going to add up all the different robots in a section plus all the different links around it as a combined total. So my control in this area right now is 2. My control in this area right now is 1. However, David's is 2. If there is a tie between the players, it's broken by the number of gear links that you have in there. So once again, coming back to this example, we would both have 2. However, David would win because he has more gear links than me.
Right.
Then you get the victory points of those particular sections. You'll take them from the pool.
Yeah, and in addition to that, you're going to look at your development tiles because some of those will also have end-game scoring as well. You're going to add those into the mix, and then you'll see who wins.
Yep. So this is an extremely fast-playing game. Even with 4 players, it's about 45 minutes to an hour to get through. So for the simple fact that the end game can be drawn very quickly by just flipping the tiles. And then it's a race to see where you can get the points. There's also a ton of variability in these cogs. There's dozens of these cogs in there, all with completely different powers. And they, just like you said, you may be in a situation where you want to link up 2 city tiles, and that's your goal for that round, and then you find some juicy development, you're like, oh, wow, I cannot pass this one
And
up.
they are all very interesting because there's a number of times where I'll pull one and use it, and Jeremy or someone else will say, wait a minute,
How do you do
how
that?
are you doing that? Because that's pretty powerful. And everyone gets a little bit of that from these tiles. So there's a lot of variability in there for sure.
So go check this one out on Kickstarter, guys. If you guys have any questions, make them in the comments below. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and everything else that we do. And we'll catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.